See, we're not in content yet. We're just
Everything's
in
prepared
text.
except the actual content.
That's my point. Exactly.
Okay, well, with
Right.
that in mind...
With that in mind, well, why don't we invite somebody?
Okay, let's
Okay.
invite someone to the show.
To do the content, because we're not good at it.
No, yeah.
But on the other hand, we do think that there's important things to talk about,
Yeah.
and that's really fundamental. And that's what I thought probably Michael Tillyer represents that in the Valley in a lot of ways. Like,
Yeah.
if he didn't keep doing what he was doing, people would wonder why he did it to begin with. He hasn't stopped doing it. Should we invite him in?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Mike,
let's-
bring a chair in because we're just introducing you. But you know, I don't want to tell your story when you're better at it than I am.
Well,
Good to see you, Michael. Thanks for coming.
Good to see you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ed.
No, it's fine. We can clap
Okay.
later. We'll add the clapping later on.
Right, clapping. Good, good. Yes, we have one person in the audience today, so that's an important part of it. Michael, you were really my idea to bring on, as you sort of know a little bit about what Holyoke Media is and everything, but and have a friend here, but you always struck me as somebody who actually decided to do something and stuck with it. In the movie business, that's almost impossible. But you decided, art-wise, what mattered a little bit. Do you want to go ahead? Because I'll start talking about the little I know, and that's not important.
Well, I think that you're talking about 25 years of doing just one thing, or 40 years of doing another thing. Because I've had 40 years.
Is that the way you see it?
Well, I do see a kind of a dichotomy between my life personally as an artist and my life maybe as an artist that has done things for other artists. So I have two things to talk about.
Well, I see what you're saying. I was thinking, first of all, your art is one thing, but in the Valley, your importance really is your contribution to something no one else is doing.
So actually, that's a good point. Why don't you? I mean, I'm actually very interested in hearing about what you're doing now as an artist, but also like what you have done in the past 25 years and how that is important, you know, to art and artists in the Valley.
I can connect those because
we don't know if we could.
The short story of what I'm doing now, the Anchor House of Artists, the New England Visionary Artist Museum, has a history, has a 25-year history. In 1997, I had come to grow over the years previous a group of artists who lived with serious mental illnesses. Controversial language. Nonetheless, I love their art, and I tried showing it around to different art dealer kinds of people, and of course no one was really interested. It didn't fit that mold. So I thought, well, you know, my father died. I had a little bit of money. I had $5,000, you know, and so I thought I could open my studio and just live on that for 5 months and see how that would go, and we did it, and then it just continued on. There was a cohort of artists who came in, were working. We had, a relationship, producing art. I began to find shows outside, like at the University of Massachusetts, the Boston Federal Reserve Bank, the Outsider Show in New York City, which was at the Puck Center then, St. Elizabeth Hospital in Washington. But that was a tremendous amount of work. And the important thing to me was just that home base and the relationships there. So I got a little more money as a grant, and then I opened up a little more space because space became available downstairs. This isn't a short story. We just grew. We got support. We grew a little more. We got support. In 2010, I made this decision to invite professional artists in to self-stage shows, and that way create parity. Who knows whose art is what? And artists would self-select, and it did give the freedom to regional artists to sort of step out of the pressure of a dealership situation and show what they wanted to show. We've been successful. A lot of people have come in. Increasingly, people of a higher lack of a better word again, caliber, who have achieved a certain amount of success. Most recently, Bill Arnold, who's represented in museums and stuff. And so is Scott Pryor. And that's not really the requirement there.
Yeah. No.
Because art is only incidental to the lives of the artists that lived.
No, good point.
And so that's the short story. That's what we did. That's what is there now. We have a reception on coming this Friday. This will probably be aired much later than that. We include a beginner, a woman who is studied at the Quantico FBI forensic art.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Wow. And a guy who's got quite a credible vita, who's doing a peacenik thing. I'll describe it as that, Robert Markey. And then we have Charles Miller, a 90-year-old artist who are doing a revolving exhibit for a year until his 91st birthday. And we have Bill Arnold, he's continuing throughout May. We have a jazz band, we have a performance arena now. Oh, okay, thank you. We have 5 showrooms, a performance arena, and we control a lot of the foyer as well. So we have a lot of art. We have over 300 pieces on display at any one point.
Really?
It's a lot of fun.
300.
And it's got the funk. It's it's not a dress-up building, and it's
an
right
interesting space.
Yeah, yeah. It's on the edge of Northampton, coming up from East Hampton.
Yeah.
I like to consider it a little piece of East Hampton in Northampton. It's the first business going in, the last business coming out.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah. And
Well, I know a little bit more. You didn't hear about him till recently, right?
Well,
Holyoke seems to be.
I mean, recently, as in maybe 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and
another
it was,
artist with cred. Yeah.
It was Peter Dellert, likely
Yeah.
and then I didn't even realize that you and John Landino and Ben Westbrook had such a history together. And we're going to reserve the two of them for another show. I want to tell Ed about these 2 cats who passed away, unfortunately, fairly recently.
Okay.
But I was kind of blown away that all of a sudden I'm like, what? There's a new gallery in town, and it turns out no, you had been there for a while, and I somehow, I mean, part of it is kind of somehow the Holyoke Northampton divide, if there is one. But I've been spending a lot of time in Holyoke, and I've been trying to do this kind of stuff here. But I'm very happy that I did find your gallery, because I've seen some amazing stuff there, and I've purchased 1 or 2 cool little pieces there. So.
I think you came through Amy Johnquist.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
the first time was probably Amy.
Yeah.
Did she? Because I know she had a show recently.
Yeah.
Would it have been a show that she did back then, or was?
Well, she did that show way back where she took up all the spaces, and she had a kind of a circus of supporting characters.
Right. Yes, and including the Holyoke hummus truck. Are you talking about that?
Yes, that's right.
And then remember that I brought. So this is kind of interesting. She painted 2 trucks: the Holyoke hummus truck, and also the Holyoke media truck, which. No one knows that this truck even exists. No one even knows about Holyoke Media. That's all about to change if I have anything to do with that. But I realize if she's doing this kind of retrospective of sorts of her work, and she's bringing the Holyoke hummus truck partly because it's a piece of art, but it also provides food for the people. Let me make sure that the other truck that she painted, and so I went and I did what I had to do to get the certificate to even be able to drive it down to Northampton. So yes, that was a really cool show. I think I was at a show before then, but that was right around the time when I caught wind of the gallery and of you. And good stuff.
But it's not just a gallery; it's a museum, isn't it?
Well, in 2017, there was another space that was available in the building. It was formerly a guy who came into town trying to get a stone business, tile and countertop things. And it didn't work out for him, and that space just stood vacant for a number of years. And I kept trying to scheme how to get some more support, and it took 2 or 3 years, and we did.
Yeah.
By that time, I had lost people. 25 years, a long time. some of my artists were old to begin with, and they passed away. Their work has their estates have been willed, their intellectual estates have been willed to the Anchor House of Artists.
Right, right.
So our mission had grown not only to support the studio lives of artists and living, but to conserve and educate about the works of artists who have passed.
Right.
One example of that is Genevieve Burnett, and the reason why it's important, her estate's important, is that she lived the life of a schizophrenic woman in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and to the 2000s. She lived until 2015, which was a different time. It's a historical period to have been a mentally ill person in that time for a lot of different reasons. The introduction of chemical restraints and all the rest. The development of language. She painted every day of her life, and she also wrote in a journal every day of her life.
Wow.
We have journals going back to 1956 to the day she died. And we have over 700 of her paintings in extant.
Oh my God.
In various conditions. We have sold some paintings while she was living into nice collections.
Right.
She was doing well in that niche market called the outsider market.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, in the, as much as I
But that's
could
a
do
big
for her.
archiving job, isn't it? You're like, you can't throw away somebody's painting if they,
That's
how
another
can it be?
issue.
Isn't that something where you become almost like a father figure to them, not just a person who is dealing for them, because you've got a treasure of somebody's life expressed that may not be understood by other people. Am I leaping off the...
The only word is fatherhood.
Back to that story, I didn't really mean father in that sense, but I do mean that you become a special person in their lives as a witness, don't you? Of the sort of thing that they progress through in their art.
The one thing that I think makes me a little different in terms of my relationship with artists and my relationship with artists with mental illnesses, I guess there's two things. One is, in my youth, I also spent time in a psychiatric hospital, a notable one. So I always dealt with this, who am I kind of thing. And it was a challenge, actually, as an artist, a child artist, to have experienced that. Because I grew up being suspect of my life as an artist. And I found always compelled, you can't stop working in the studio. But I found, being suspect of the kind of the looseness and the opening of a dam as I would go into the studio and the kind of thought process that would go on there. So I found myself having to jump back to this other side, which was an administrative life, which was a counseling life, where I had to build up these very profound boundaries between people who I was interacting with.
Yeah.
So part of this whole process was a part of integrating. Nonetheless, I found myself in working with people that I could see them in a way that was straightforward. The word would be non-judgmental, but that's a word, and I have judgments.
Yeah.
And people judge me.
Of course.
So, but it's I can speak schizophrenia. I can speak bipolar illness, and so that made me a special amalgam of person to do this.
Jimmy, that's really interesting. I don't know if there's another paragraph on that, but that kills me when you say you can speak it.
Yeah.
Do you mean that they begin to understand together with you what you're doing as opposed to where they were working without you? I mean, when you say you spoke it, is there a better way of saying that?
Yeah, understanding symbolic language, understanding process. I can see that. It doesn't scare me. It doesn't concern me. I can help people get from unsafe places to safe places, and with a pretty much a non-violent kind of a thing. So that's not art. So let's go back to art. I mean, art is like really exciting.
Well, wait, hold on a sec. I beg to differ, because I mean, I know what you mean when you say that's not art, but in a way that's kind of the gist of what Ed and I want to do here is you know, what is the meaning of art, and why is art so distinct, and why is it not really part of what you just described? I mean, you know, what is the role of art? This is kind of this is a larger topic, but
it is.
But you know, if Ed and I can do anything with the show, is we're sort of trying to figure out what is the role of art nowadays and in the past, and you know how do we move forward? Yeah.
I mean, art. The word art in itself is another word that is another word. Yeah. Creative process. When I was in college, feminist artists, feminists were attacking the boundaries of the male-dominated art world, to the language again. But one of the words that came out, I can't cite her name, one of the writers came up with this word, creative worker. And I identified strongly with that word.
Creative worker.
Creative worker. I put in art galleries stuff that was art. Yeah. People thought of me as the artist. Yeah. But to understand it for myself, I saw it as this creative process. Of course, coming out of college, no one gives you a handbook. What are you supposed to do now? So you think, oh God, I got to get into New York or something like that. But, you know, and I struggled with that. But it also, you know, it came back to me. Now I consider myself a very successful creative worker because I'm at this age and I can make new stuff. Yeah. I like it. Creative work. Yeah, I don't own a sailboat. You know, I don't own a nice car. Doesn't matter. You know, I have the freedom, and plus the fact I open the door and I have a collection of art that's just magnificent.
Ed, do you own a sailboat? Do you own a fancy car?
My car's almost as old as yours.
I know, yeah.
Right? We're in the old car world. Michael, that's a beautiful thing you just said. I very much appreciate it, and I'd say we've redeemed ourselves. Marianne, don't you think? Right? We've redeemed ourselves. Thank you for that. I really want you to say a little bit about your own art, because you've decided in a certain form that's evocative with rough materials. You decided not to be refined. So I think if people look at your art, do they ask you about it in some way that you've learned to explain it, or am I asking a harder question than I'd like to? Because I don't like to ask hard questions, you know.
Well, in my recent work, which I would consider almost 30 years, I launched from, I learned with minimalists, New York minimalists, and it was all cutting into the platonic solid, and I could never make a smooth weld. So I always had the edge, and I worked with that, and I brought that in. You know, earthiness was always important to me, even in the most abstract work that I was doing. When my first child was born, I just skipped over into making another kind of art, involved a kind of a Dadaist process, but it also began to harken back to a narrative process, and I began to build these wooden figures. And they are actually, there's a little reminiscence of my father's whittling. And so I started making these, for lack of a better term, again, it's just folkish, lack of better terms that used to make me so pissed off, whimsical. And now people, I found people just react them. They crack up, even if it's a serious subject. Yeah. They crack up, and that's great. I made this one standing figure with a sign. Originally, the sign said "Great" in bright orange letters. The whole idea, I built it in 2016. What was great then? What were we trying to make great again? So here's this character. He's holding that sign. It's been a wonderful piece. It's life size, and I'd be able to put new signs in every once in a while. Anyways, so, but people laughed when they saw him, even though he had a very stern face. And so working with figures in the studio like that, it's a wonderful process because I'm leaning into it. It's hot, it's dirty. I do all my own work, and sometime over the length of the process, whatever that length may be, in the last 5 minutes, this figure comes out at me, and I'm looking at something, and it's something looking back at me. So personally, there's a love, and I feel it evocative. So other people, it works for other people. And I have come to consider myself a 3D cartoonist.
Oh, yeah?
Not a sculptor, but a 3D cartoonist.
Interesting.
And that works. And so,
Wow.
talking about my
I think that's here's the thing is that one of the reasons why I've always got connected to your art is you seem to want to make art that people have around them. Right. Yeah. Okay.
That's what
I'm sorry. He gets to
does.
see what I'm doing. I'm wandering, thinking. My question. You want the art to be sociable on some level. You want it to be in the mix, and that is important. And a lot of artists want to transcend it, but it's a nice thing.
I can describe my process here.
Yeah. What do
You
you
can
got?
see this is the grid, right? That's the minimalism right there.
Yeah.
So what happened in my life was that I once wore a very big hat. But the whims of the world came to gobble that up. And I went down. But nonetheless, I returned and I had a smaller hat. But the more subtler whims of the world came along and ate me up. So, in order to escape, I had to build a boat.
Wow.
But the whims of the world came up and it ripped off this end of the boat. This all comes to the grid. Ripped off this end of the boat. And then ripped off that end of the boat. And it went down. But I never lost my T-shirt.
That's very subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice work. Nice work.
See that cartoonist minimalism?
Yeah, it all came together. That was quite nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Comedy is minimalist language,
Yes.
more minimalist than poetry.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
The less said.
Yeah, the less said.
Well, thank you.
Got it?
Yeah, I mean,
I think in the way that we're talking is about a pilot show, Marianne, unless you feel
I
differently.
think you should still sit down so we can get a final shot.
I don't mind. I don't mind.
why
But
you're-
I really think that you did a gorgeous thing, Michael, and I'll stick by that. Okay. There's the two of you on my shot. You can see it now. Yeah, Michael. Thank you so much. Okay. What do we have a final 2 cents to put on the wide shot? I don't know.
Well, why don't you just say the name of your gallery and we'll add some graphics.
We'll come at the
but-
end of it. Yeah.
But
Yeah, the Anchor House of Artists at 518 Pleasant Street in Northampton. I don't know if you on your television can scan that.
oh, the QR code.
There we go. Whoops.
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah. There we go.
Probably not in
Scan
focus,
that
but-
QR code. At least try. That
Give
would
it a
be
shot.
fun. Yeah,
Oh, look at
perfect.
you did
There you
it,
go.
Michael.
All right.
Wow.
And you can go to
Okay.
anchorhouseartist.org, find out all about us.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much,
You're welcome.
Michael.